Hi, Paul. It's Ali. I'm not quite sure whether to say this is your life, but here I am. I'm not quite sure what to say about Paul. There's so much to say about him. Was the brother to my husband that he never had. He is wonderful with my children. He's wonderful with me. He keeps in contact with us all. He was Steve's business partner, or Steve was his business partner. They built up the most amazing company ever. They had the most amazing relationship. You know, just because Steve's not here doesn't mean, you know, that ends. You know, he even bought a house in Topsham in Devon, a couple of miles away, so he could be nearer with us to support us. You know, wherever he is in the world, I know, you know, he's got our best interests at heart. I could go on, but I think you get the picture. Just to say, thanks a lot, Paul. Thank you. We love you.
This is where I go in my story to people that come into Water Babies, because I say that to them all. And I say this, what I'm about to say to you now, is the truth of the Water Baby story. And the example is the first 3 people we ever employed. So the first is Kim, teacher number 1. We started in June 2002. We put a few months out, a little advert out looking for a swimming teacher. And she was a 21-year-old, 22-year-old swimming teacher at the local swimming pool in Harrogate. And she saw this advert, got intrigued and rang me. It's quite funny actually, she left a message on my answer phone and I rang her back and left a message on her answer phone, and she'd just met her now long-term partner Mark. They'd been going out a month and he heard the word babies on the answer phone message and talked to her as pregnant, had a heart attack. So Kim meets me at Starbucks in Harrogate, and in bounces, and I mean bounce like Tia, this 21-year-old. And within 30 seconds, she's telling me what an amazing swimming teacher she is, and anyone can come and watch her lessons. And I'm looking at her going, you cocky little bitch. Right, I will come and watch your lessons. And I went, and she was an amazing teacher, and I hired her, trained her, a bit better than I was trained. Nothing like we train people now. Trained her and let her loose. And she is an amazing swimming teacher. And instantly in North Yorkshire just had this huge following in her classes. In fact, when we went from 4 to 14 franchises, a lot of those people came out of her classes. Just huge following. Absolutely all over it. So we grew. She was there as we grew. She saw us growing up to the point we got to 14. And I eventually went to the swimming pool one day to go and see her, and she kind of sheepishly took me to one side and said, Paul, I actually am pregnant now. And I was like, great. Shit. What am I going to do? And she went off and gave birth to Franklin. And I would say, no maternity leave. I mean, she had quite a birth as well. 16 weeks, something like that. They were well within it. She was back in the pool.
Wow.
Totally just dedicated to her job. It got to this magic moment which she'd seen everybody else around her become franchisees and so forth. And she looked at me and said, I'd like to take on a franchise. And this whole thing about giving people a go, I was like, yeah, of course you can. Where do you want to do it? I think she was going to say somewhere in Yorkshire. And she went, I'm going to go to Norwich. Yeah. I was like, what are you going to Norwich for? You know, you're born and raised in Yorkshire. And she went, well, that's the point. If I see the same face walking down Harrogate High Street, I'm going to go nuts. I'm going to start a new life in my family. We've chosen Norwich. So I'm like, okay. So I said, no, what's the ambition? Because I tend to ask people that. And she said, my ambition is to send Franklin to private school. I thought, that's an interesting one. Why do you want to do that? And so she won't mind me saying she had quite a bad time at school. And she said, I want him to give him the best start. And for me, that's my son. I went, okay, well, go to Norwich, work hard, and, you know, I actually said to her, write a post-it note, stick it on your computer. This is Water Baby's folklore now. Look at it every day, work hard. You might achieve it. So she takes herself off to Norwich. She had no money. We gave her a massive discount on her franchise fee because it wasn't helped her out financially, because we wouldn't have been where we were without what she had done for us up until that point. Yeah. So it's like, just go, get it going. She smashed Norwich out of the park, did so well she actually bought the neighbouring territory, grew that as well. Literally 4 years later, my phone goes off one day in the office and it's Kim walking Franklin down the driveway to his first day at that private school.
Really?
Wow.
Wow. And we were both bawling on the phone. That was a hell of a day.
Yeah.
When I taught, I was the first tutor, and it's very hard to become a water babies tutor. They're the best of the best of the best. But Kim was the first tutor after me. She taught hundreds. She was the next person who did that. When I stood up in Vancouver and gave my keynote speech in 2009 as the biggest baby swimming company in the world, the person standing right next to me delivering that speech with me was Kim. That's the first person we ever employed, and she's still a franchisee to this day.
Yeah.
Still running her franchise business. As is Tamsin, by the way, as is Jackie and Alicia, the first four. The first two sold, but those they're all still there. The second person we employed was Claire, teacher number 2. The quietest person you ever want to meet on the planet, like a mouse, really quiet, not confident, you would say, but a real inner strength. In fact, when I trained her, I made her stand across the bypass in Leeds shouting her lesson plans across the traffic to throw her voice. But I could always rely on her. I could always go, Claire, can you drive 50 miles over there and go and teach a lesson? And I was like, yeah, no problem. It's real inner steel. Happily married, had a young child. And then one day she was supposed to be teaching, and I got a phone call from her that morning, bawling her eyes out. And her life had just been torpedoed the night before. Her husband had walked out on her. She never saw it coming. And if it was on the Jeremy Kyle show, you would have thought they were making up the circumstances and being off the chart horrific. So we said, come round. She came round to the house, crying. I've never seen so much tears in my life. And they did that, have a cup of tea. She was supposed to go and teach that afternoon. And I said, there's no way, I'll teach the classes. You're not in a fit state. You go anywhere near my classes, I'll kill you, they're my babies, I'll teach my life. I was like, that's not going to happen. The afternoon came, I said, look, get in the car and I'll drive you into Leeds. I'll teach classes and I'll take you home. Cried all the way into Leeds. Got to the venue and I put my foot down and went, I am teaching these classes. Went to go and get changed, walked into the pool area. She was in the pool in her blue top. And the clients were coming in and I was not happy. So I scuttled over to the corner, waiting for the inevitable breakdown to save the day. She taught 4 classes back to back. Not a single person would know what's going on in her private life. The last person walked out the pool and she burst into tears again. And that was the first time I saw the essence of being a water babies teacher in somebody. I could give you a million stories like it now. She turned around and said, I have to go. She's from Newcastle. She said, I'm going to have to go to Newcastle. I need to go back to my support group. And what she actually said was, I'm going to have to go to Newcastle. I'd love to have a franchise. I know you won't sell me one because I'm not a real businesswoman and I only like to run a few babies. I was like, Claire, I don't care if you go and teach 2 babies. If we can help you get yourself back on your feet again, we'll get you going. So we did. Again, financial support. It wasn't about the money. Set her up in Newcastle. You could probably see where this one's going. That business went gangbusters. Its height got close to 1,000. She's still a franchisee to this day as well. And the bit about that story that I love more than anything else is that she raised that single daughter, who's now Flo in the coop. But she's an independent, financially strong, independent woman. She just got married, actually. That was franchisee. That was teacher number 2.
Yeah.
And the last is Janice, our first ever administrator, I touched on before. I went to Rob, who was my designer, and Rob was like my Arthur Daly. Anything I needed, like Rob, he was amazing. And I said, Rob, I think I need an administrator, I'm struggling. And he went, I know this woman called Janice, and you can meet her at he was in the hockey club at Ilkley, you can meet her at the hockey club dinner on Saturday night. I was like, great. So I rock up to his hockey club dinner, and I'm totally in work mode, and it's about 7 o'clock in the evening. Imagine the scene, disco ball, smoke everywhere, everyone's drunk. And I walk in, and I go, no, where's this Janice? And he goes, just go and get in. Rob disappears, and out of the gloom comes Janice, staggering towards me, off her face. I think she even fell down, and I'm like, great. See me when you're sober kind of thing. I kind of was just in a grump for the evening. Anyway, a few days later, she comes round to the house, walks in, proper strong Yorkshire woman, proper, no messing. I'd say within 2 minutes, she'd sat on the floor. This is an interview. She sat on the floor, kicked her shoes off, sat on the floor with her legs curled up, looking up at me, going, why should I come to work for you then? Literally. And I'm like, I like you.
Good old Yorkshire lass.
I like you. So I hired her. I'd say, it took me 3 weeks to realise I'd probably hired the world's greatest administrator. Off the chart efficient. I came into the office and she went, we're doing things like this. I can love you. As I said, she was there when we went from 4 to 14.
Yeah.
She was my first full-time employee. Her job was to do Yorkshire, true water baby style, roll her sleeves up. Let's go around the country, let's make it all work, help me. The end of that first year, I took her for her HR review, which back in those days was down the wine bar, bottle of wine. And But I haven't told you about this, is that Janice had quite a hard upbringing.
Yeah.
And everything in her life up until that point had told her she was probably her ambition level was kind of here. I think she was a receptionist in a dog food company, I think, at the time. Nothing wrong with that, but no, she wasn't. That was her where she was. But really hard upbringing. So in her appraisal, I went, Janice, how do you think it's going? And all of her inner insecurities came out for the first time. She kind of looked down on the table and kind of went a bit sheepish and moved her finger around and was like, I really like my job and I like you guys, and are you happy with me? And I was like, happy with you? Happy with you? You're amazing. If you leave me, I'm going to kill you. Here's a pay rise. You're now a manager. You know, nobody'd ever spoken to her like that.
Yeah.
There's a real throwaway comment. I went, who knows, Janice? One day you might be a franchisee. And it was a genuine throwaway comment because when I appointed her, 2 things she said to me in her interview: don't like babies, hate water. Honestly true.
Wow.
So it was a real throwaway comment, but she'd seen all this stuff go on,
Yeah.
and it really resonated with her. And her partner Aaron, who used to keep our computers going, who's in IT, we had 2 computers in the lead, used to keep them going. Hated his job as well, and they got talking. And then a few weeks later, she came and tapped me on the shoulder. I'll never forget where I was. She tapped me on the shoulder in the office, and really sheepishly, and said, "Aaron and I have been talking, and we'd like to buy Yorkshire off you." And I jumped up and gave her a massive hug. We were both very emotional, gave her a big hug. I was like, of course you could buy Yorkshire off me. And we did the deal in like 30 seconds. I went, Janice, it's probably worth something like this. You can have it for something like that. And there's quite a big gap between those numbers. Because again, we wouldn't have been there without her. And then I went, how are you going to get the money? Because it was still a significant sum. And she had very humble means. And I said, no, you can't trust me now. If you're buying a business off me, you've got to go and get a consultant, an independent advisor. Well, you like my dad? Well, it doesn't work that way. But anyway, we did all muck in together. And the magic day came when she had to go to the bank to go and get the money. Lloyd's Bank, Bradford Business Centre, I'll never forget it, etched in my head. And the very last thing, they were going into the bank with her business advisor, his rah-rah speech as they crossed the threshold was, I keep telling you can't get this money, this is going to be impossible. That, as they were going into the bank, is what he said.
Wow.
You do not know Janice. She was not leaving that bank without that money, and she got the money.
Yeah.
And I got to know that bank manager afterwards. He funded a few franchisees afterwards, and he said she was such a tour de force. I knew that woman was going to be successful. Yeah. I bent every rule in this bank to get her that money. And she bought it. Yorkshire was so big that we just ran it as an area. But when we made it into proper franchise, it was 3 franchise territories. We'd never sold 3 franchise territories. It was 3 franchise territories. She sold South Yorkshire to one of her team. The other 2 were so big again, we made them into 3 again. She sold North Yorkshire to somebody else, and she still to this day runs the 2. Where Water Babies began, she still has them, her and Aaron. Still a Water Babies franchise to today. Again, she's bought a new house a few years back. I go and stay in the west wing of her home when I go and see her, and financially secure. And the lovely thing about that story is I had to teach her to be a Water Babies teacher, of course, because nobody gets a franchise off me if they can't do the service. Yeah. Remember, hate water, don't like babies. So how's this going to go? And she had to go and teach, and I had to teach in secret because I couldn't tell the team that we were selling. You know, it was all secret training. And I had to take her to a pool to teach her first lessons. And it was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. She was unbelievable. We call it having the thing. She was off the chart. It was amazing. Born swimming teacher. So that was incredible. Now, those are the first 3 people we ever employed. They're still in Water Babies. They're still franchisees to this day. Yeah. We are littered with those stories. Yeah. Littered with them. Yeah. Right across the business. People who start from being parents to teachers to franchisees, or have gone through head office and they're now directors at the company. Yeah. That is our story, giving people opportunity. And I go to war on that. Yeah. And people at work know that. That is the essence of everything that we are. And it's people first above everything else. Yeah. We have gone through some rough times, because, you know, it's not all plain sailing. We have, I think you know this story, don't you, Farah? We've went through a time where we got rid of a lot of people. So the key person in all of this, which is where I try not to get emotional again, is Steve, my first chief exec. So Steve joined us around 2010. He was my first chief exec. Yeah. And I got to know Steve when Water Babies began. He was number 2 at the SCA, the Swimming Teachers Association. And he came to see me, like, what's this baby swimming thing? And again, sitting across the kitchen table. And I went, well, I think I'm going to take on the world with baby swimming. And he went, I'm going to take on the world with regulations. I was like, that's really exciting. But he started doing audits for us of our businesses. And so we worked together for quite a few years. And it got to the point where, again, the business had got so big that I needed the chief exec. And I approached Steve. And Steve was Mr. Leisure. He was guaranteed to become, he was really big in the leisure industry, and he was guaranteed to become the chief executive of the SJ. It's like he's going to reach the pinnacle career-wise. And there's me going, come and join this little big company down in Devon. And it took me quite a few months to convince him, and he was based in Telford, and he did, and he took a pay cut, and he gambled, and he joined. He used to commute. We had an old house, and he used to stay in the top room 3 days of the week, so he used to commute. Did that for like 6 or 7 years before he moved down finally. So totally dedicated. But when Steve arrived, very quickly we bonded. The business world is littered with examples of founders getting chief execs and it going horribly wrong. You know, all your culture, everything you invest in this person, it just goes down the Swanee and they row and they fight. We were completely the opposite of that. We literally bonded. We were like a married couple, incredibly close.
We lived in your house half the week, didn't he?
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a good way to start.
That worked.
Bond,
literally worked. Yeah, literally worked. But Farron knows him. It's those that knew us. There are no words to describe how close that relationship and how unique it was. We laughed every day. We never had a row in the whole time that we worked together. And think about that, all the things you go through.
Yeah.
That's
come at
over
things differently.
12 years? No, 10 years, 11 years?
11 years, yeah. Not a single row.
Yeah.
And, you know, we strong characters. And we always used to play our paper exercise of, you know, what should we do next? And we'd sometimes be very different in our view about something, but we'd always come to a consensus, and we always had each other's back. So it's an incredibly special relationship, which also filtered out through the network. Steve was loved by everybody. I mean, just a larger-than-life character. So, and he really took the pressure off me. You say, I'm your protector, Paul. You know, I'm here, that's my job. You sit over there. So very, very close. When COVID came along, and we went through the nightmare, which eventually took him. As COVID happened, we knew what was going to happen in the UK, I'd like to say, before the British government seemed to know, because we were operating in China.
Yeah.
Of course, yes. Yes.
So our franchisees were speaking to us and telling us the shit show that was really going on. And we were watching the telly here. You remember when it came to Italy, and we still had people going to Ascot or wherever it was in this country. And we're like, close the country.
Yeah.
Idiots, you know.
Yeah, because the news, because I remember the news was November, December, somewhere where there was mutterings in China about something. And I do remember that, but no one took any notice. That's just knew. China. And I'm guessing you, from that point, you started to get way more information than anyone else.
We were getting way more information. And when it really accelerated, there was a moment when it really accelerated.
Yeah.
Just before the whole Italy bit.
Yeah.
And we're like, this is mental. How can the government not be doing something? So we knew it was coming, and we were bracing ourselves. Then, of course, it finally hit, didn't it? Reality hit. And we had to close Water Babies on the 16th of March, I think it was.
Yeah.
I think that we all had to go home on the 23rd.
23rd, I think, was the first lockdown.
Was the first lockdown.
Yeah.
So just before the 16th, Steve and I got together. We used to get together at the Boston Tea Party in Honiton. He lived in Exeter at this point, and I lived out in Sherborne. So we'd drive into work, and if we had something to discuss, you know, like significant, we'd go there. And so picture the scene. It's like early in the morning. He's like up at 5 o'clock, old military man. I'm not an early person. So we rock up, and I'm like this, and he's full of beans. And we order our breakfast, and he was always a fry up. I'm a bit more healthy. And sit there. But we're fairly sanguine at this particular one. We're like, this is going to be tough.
Yeah.
Let's get the papers out. So we wrote down what we thought we had to do. And we both flipped our paper around. And I remember us looking at each other. And literally, almost word for word, we'd written at the top of our paper, we will not lose a single franchise. And we will come out of this stronger than we go into it. We knew we were about to enter the fight of our lives. We had no idea what was going to happen next. And it sounds really weird. I cannot tell you how energized we were. We were pumped. We're like, come on then.
A challenge.
See if you're going to take our business off us.
Yeah.
Come on. You know. But come on. It was really like that, and we were laser focused. Steve and I are really good at being, when something happened, really good at sort of being emotional for 2 minutes and going, right, what do we do about it?
Yeah.
So, and he was really good at that. He was like, okay, that's upsetting. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So we were both in that zone. I always remember those words because I never thought I'd lose him. I said, I remember said to him, we're going to lose some good people in this, thinking I have to make some people lose their jobs or whatever.
Yeah.
I always remember saying that to him. Anyway, so we go to work, we close the business, and then between the 16th of shutting down Water Babies and the 23rd of going home, we had the war room in the office. So it's myself, Steve, and the directors sitting around the table with the screen on, basically 24/7, because we know every time zone, from Canada to China, telling people what to do. You know, as a news change or the government were giving out advice, we're on the network, do this, do that, get this loan. We know constantly this war room going on. What we didn't know is that all that time, the COVID was incubating in Steve. He'd caught it in London.
Right.
And it was incubating. And how the rest of us never got it, we'll never know, because we're all hugging each other and we're all close for a week. We then get the news to go home. Everyone's got to go. And I can remember the last time I saw Steve, I gave him a big hug at the back door and said, you know, be on the phone. We used to speak to each other every day. And off he went. That's the last time I saw him physically. And then a few days later, I think it was a Saturday, or maybe the next day, I rang him. And he sounded like he was drunk on the phone. I said, you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm not feeling a bit ropey. And he was whisked into hospital that night. Mm-hmm. And he fought for a month. And Steve was one of those people where he was so fit. he was a proper man, you know. He was so fit, he didn't even have a GP.
Yeah.
That's apparently, I was like, really? You haven't got a GP? And so we used to laugh and say, you know, if you put 100 people in a swimming pool and throw some sharks in, he's coming out. 99 have been eaten, but he's coming out. Yeah. So when he went in, it was almost they'll sort that out.
Yeah.
And right towards the end, he lasted the whole month, and just a few days before the end, he rallied. And actually, there was 3 people, and the people in the doctors in the ICU unit said they said to Alison, his wife, afterwards, there was 4 of them, him and 3 others, I think I've got this right, who rallied, and they thought he was going to make it, and he didn't, and the others did. The other bit about that, and that was just devastating. I cannot tell you it's the lowest low I've ever had, and it was terrifying as well. I was just devastated, and it's amazing people, because this is all about people. My children. I went to go and see my daughter and my kids, and my daughter took me in the garden, and I was upset. Obviously, you know, this is a few days after, and I was upset. And I remember saying to her, God, I was just sitting in the chair next to her going, I don't know, how am I going to do it without him? You know. And she was amazing. Your kids, it's how the adults turn them. She looked at me and went, you've got to remember, Dad, you did this. This is, you've got this. You'll do it. You know what you're doing. You'll do it. Never forget it. I was like, wow, am I not supposed to be giving the advice? Here's an amazing bit for you. The doctors in the ICU unit, they said to Alison afterwards, this is our day job. This is obviously off the chart, what we had to do with COVID, but we work really hard not to get emotionally involved with our patients. We care for them, but we can't take the physical pressure of being emotionally involved with everybody that comes in the door. Totally understandable. Every now and then somebody gets through, and this particular consultant said, who ran the show in this IC unit, said, I've had 2 people in my life, and Steve was one of those. He said, we could not believe who this person was, because the love that was coming from the Water Babies Network worldwide into this room was nothing they'd ever seen before. Not just cards and teddy bears, but podcasts, and they could feel it coming through the building. In fact, he had so much stuff, they were amazing with him, so much stuff, they moved him to a private ward to, because he had so much stuff. So that was, they said, we really wanted him to make it. And he said, and actually he only met Alison a couple of months ago. They bumped into each other in the supermarket. He said, I'm still not over Steve. So, and that says everything about Steve. So it was an unbelievable loss. And to come through that, it goes back to this whole conversation started with people. Why did we come through it? Because we had built this amazing people culture. Because everybody rallied around in Water Babies. Everybody had everybody's back. Everybody did what they needed to do to get the company through it to the nth degree, including our clients. Yeah. I can't think, I'm sure somebody somewhere did, but I'm actually struggling to think of a single client asked for any of their money back. The whole response, and that would have done us because we take money in advance. Yeah. The clients went, no, we'll wait for this to be over, keep our money, we'll carry on with our lessons, because they love the company as well. Where does that come from? Yeah. Worldwide, that was. Yeah. So, this whole thing that you believe in, is it really tangible? It couldn't have had a bigger test than that. And we didn't lose a single franchise.
Hi, Paul. Do you remember when we first met? I certainly do. It was at your house in Ilkley, I think, at the time, when you called me to say that you had a budding new business, and you thought it was a great idea and something that you wanted to expand, and that you were talking to a number of people, and I was on the list. So being in North Yorkshire myself, it wasn't too far away, and I jumped in the car and came over to see you. And I remember that first meeting very well, Paul, because it was in your kitchen, and literally people talk about kitchen table to successful business, and that's literally what it was, because our first meeting was sitting around your kitchen table with the kids having breakfast and domestic stuff going on, and you trying to tell me about the business, and phones ringing, and it was all very interesting. I particularly remember your lad. You'd made him his breakfast, and it was honey on toast cut up into little squares, and I remember your lad taking great delight in, when you weren't looking, taking the little squares of toast with honey on it and sticking them to the trousers of my suit. It was very evident to me that you were going to, if you possibly could, you were going to make the success of this business. The other thing that we discussed was your lack of money. You said to me, yep, I want to do this. I want to someone to help me do it, but I just don't have the money to pay a consultancy package, and the sort of figures that were being bandied around in terms of a full consultancy package for growing your business through franchising. And I remember driving home from that first meeting with you, and coming home and discussing it with my wife, and saying, I've just been to see some really great people, really, really nice people, fantastic idea. They're just a bit short of money, and we had a chat about it. And I remember my wife just saying, it doesn't matter, just do it, just help them. Just help these really nice, hard-working people achieve business success that will help so many people, and help families, and help children. And the whole thing just had a great vibe about it, and a great purpose and energy to it. So I was only too happy to help Paul at a rather discounted rate, because the whole thing just felt right.
Hi, Paul. It's an absolute honour to be asked to talk about you as someone who truly embodies the spirit of dedication, entrepreneurship and passion. I remember the first time we met, it was back in 2006, and at the time we were seeing a huge increase in the attendance at our educational seminars. And when I was asking the audience which brands they were interested in investing with, 80% of them kept saying it's Water Babies. So I looked you up, and to my delight, you were just a 2-minute drive away from my home down in Devon, and I knew then that we had to get a meeting in the diary. But when we sat down at that very first meeting, one of the things that you said to me was, we don't need you to recruit franchisees, and we don't pay for advertising. I thought, oh God, they're not going to be interested in joining. But after about an hour of talking to you, it was clear to me that you were a man that wanted to do things the right way. And from that moment to now, it's been nothing short of a privilege getting to know you and working with you. We've shared a lot over the years, a love for the sea, a bit of a passion for travelling, but most importantly, that mutual drive to uphold the highest standards in everything that we do. And your journey has been an inspiration not just to me, but to everyone in our franchising sector. From your essence of me to the expansion that you've done abroad, from innovation to the government lobbying, your impact has been nothing short of extraordinary. And it's no wonder that you have also been one of the most successful franchisors in our awards programs. I have to say my favourite moment with you was during our fireside chat at last year's conference. It was such a raw, honest, inspirational and emotional session, and it perfectly showcased the top bloke that you truly are to everyone in the franchising sector. So Paul, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your guidance, for your support, for your leadership. To me, you will always be an utter, total legend. So thank you.